Welcome back, Rover fans. This is a welcome back for me as well, because I think it's only been about a week since I uploaded my last video, but it's about 3 weeks, maybe more, since I last even looked around in the garage, I think. And it's a bomb site. Lots of bits off other cars that aren't this one. Crap everywhere. And I need to first of all have a big tidy up. I also discovered that I had been soaking my handbrake cable in a solution of deox stuff, which is probably a mistake to leave it in there. Hopefully it will come up clean, but it shows it works. This was the handbrake cable end, this little turnbuckle thing, which was very rusty. And in there we also had the bracketry for the rear spring clamps, lower clamps, and the handbrake adjustment mechanism. Anyway, I am going to clean up the garage, then try and get the rear axle in and supported on, where are they? These, right. I'll explain in a bit, but basically, well, yeah, I'll explain in a bit, but that unit there, unit is going to replace the Niver mats. Well, I was partway through my garage cleanup when I decided, well, I kind of got sidetracked, so I cleaned up those bits and pieces that were in the pot of hydrate deox C. So that's the rear handbrake adjuster thing, rear spring clamps, nuts and bolts. Then I did the handbrake cable and the main fuel pipe to engine and the return, and also somewhere around here a brake line. This is the main brake line from front to rear. Most of it's really good, but we have some corrosion there that I'm not really happy with, so I'll have to chop it and join it and reform a new front end. The rest of it is good to go. I'll just toss a bit of dark green paint on it once I've repaired that union. These would originally have just been bare silver, just the passivate, and so I've got some rattle can silver. There's a couple of bits of rust to treat, but it's not bad. So those are good to go again. And the handbrake cable is all good, cleaned it all up, works perfectly. So that's good. So I can go back to tidy up the garage and then hopefully reinstall some of this stuff. The original rear brake lines were completely shot, the ones that run over the axle. So I've replaced them in copper conifer. I never fully finished them, fully shaped them or anything. So once the axle's back in the car, I'll bend them to shape. Then I'll paint them green as well. Now to more interesting things. Rear springs and dampers. Rover SD1s, most of them that weren't the poverty spec 2 litre and 2.3 models, had self-leveling rear suspension, otherwise known as Bogue or Bose Niver mats. So it's a clever system. There are no link pipes or anything. It's all in each individual unit. Basically, there's a set of valves and plates in here, and if you put increased weight in the back of your car and compress that, it'll sit low initially, but then as you drive it and it goes over bumps and things, it'll pump itself up internally and always return to the same ride height, which is incredibly clever, very neat, very simple, works brilliantly. And I think even some modern Volkswagens use an identical system. I think Mercedes used it as well. So very clever, cheap and simple to install, but you do need the correct springs to go with them. So there was an awful lot of different springs on Rover SD1s. Most of the Niver mats on the Van den Plas EFI and Vitesse models were non-linear springs, so the spring rate changed with the load or the compression on it, either by making the wire thickness non-constant, so it would be thin at the top and the wire would get progressively fatter towards the bottom, or they would actually change the coil spacing, so the coils would be very tightly wound at the top and not at the bottom, or vice versa. This, being a diesel, has linear springs, so they're the same coil spacing, same wire thickness all the way through, which is good for me because I don't have to then be super careful with what damper unit I fit. I was originally going to fit, I was going to reuse the originals, then I was going to replace with Monroe Gasmatic, but that wouldn't have allowed me to control the ride height as well. So what I've done is bought a pair of Monroe air spring dampers. So it has a valve on the side there that you feed air into. This one is the partner one on the other side of the car. There's a little diaphragm in there which extends and compresses, so you can use this as ride height adjustable. It won't do it itself, you'll have to do it by adding or removing air pressure, which you do using conventional like airline and a Schroeder valve somewhere, same as you have on a bicycle pump, that guy teed in, and basically, well, that's how you do it. So quite simple to install. They'll go in the car. The only slight problem for me was that the bushings for the Rover, as I probably bored you before when I inserted them, these bushes would have taken that kind of metal tube to slide over the damper rod, which on these Niver mats is fairly chunky. On these kiddies, they're quite narrow, so if I put that on there and shove that whole assembly through there, fine, the bush will squidge up on the tube, but the tube will never mate properly with that and it will be a disaster. So I have had to rustle through my bin of bits, find this tube which fits nicely into there. It's a little bit baggy, but by the time this is fitted in the car and then bolted up and compressed, that'll grip on there fine, and it's a lot better on here. It's still a tiny bit of movement, but it's nowhere near as bad. In fact, the movement is akin to what you have on these originals anyway. So that's all good. I just need to, so these don't fit completely snug anyway, so that on there is similar, so that's what I'm going with. So I need to cut that in half so it's the same length as that, make 4 of them, top and bottom. Then I can put them in the car, put the springs on, spring clamps, and lift the whole thing into the back of the car. The other thing I was waiting on, crumbs, this is a long video. This is 4 minutes 31 of me chatting away, explaining things. I was worried about the bolts that held the trailing arms to the underbody. I have reassured myself that actually those Tapper-Tite self-cutting bolts were probably done for simplicity of assembly on the production line and cost effectiveness of the captive threads in there. You didn't need to have proper nuts, you could just have a hole and then bosh the bolts through and they would grip. So what I've done is just pulled out some standard bolts. I've got locking washers as well if I need them. I think I will put them on to start with, and then once the car's done a few miles and settled, I'll check the torque of everything and then take it for a suspension alignment. So trailing arms are good to go. Nylon bushes are on, the nylon sleeves are on inside the bushes, which was also a pain to find. Nylon sleeves that go on the metal bit to stop metal on metal contact with the axle. And then I have all new nuts and bolts to go from the Watts linkage to the Watts linkage hangers up there. So we're good to go. And fin. Just as a complete aside, standard spring, Vitesse non-linear spring, so thin wire at the top, fat wire at the bottom, and variable coil spacing as well. I have a few bits drying, paint drying. I'm now putting a Hydrate 80 on a few of these rusty pipes, and I'm not talking properly because I've got paintbrush in my mouth, but that's what I'm doing. What can I hear? one day when I'm rich, I met a guy the other day who's flown on that, and it cost about 4.5 grand for about an hour or something stupid. So love to do it. That's a lot of money. I'm about ready to start putting the axle in. The paint hasn't dried on the spring retainer pads yet, or clip things, but that doesn't matter. The springs can just rest in position. These are weird because they have one end where the coil is just round, the other end where it's been flattened, and the flattened side goes up because the coil needs to sit in that channel there, and then spring retainer pads go on the top. So I'll do that, then I'll go and get a trolley jack and a few more nuts and bolts so I'm ready when I need them, and then I can lift the whole thing up into position. The dampers can just be slotted in and sit as a dummy for the moment because the spring will take the weight of the car, and then I can get rid of these whole axle stands. I know these have raised a lot of concern, but literally you can grab the car and wiggle it. That's me put all my weight in and it doesn't move, so that's why I was reasonably sure that I wasn't going to get crushed to death. Right, trailing arms are in position. Everything's sort of hanging in there at the moment. Springs are in position and guided up into the top of their mounts. I'm going to see if I can thread the dampers in at one end at least. These are obviously very, very short, much shorter than Niver mats, so I may not need to at this stage, but then after that it's Watts linkage, and we're close. Well, after all that, spot the big fat fail. Put the bloody Watts linkage in upside down. What a dickhead. Those bars are meant to be parallel to the axle. That's all cock about face, so I'll have to pull that off again. Bummer. Axle is in. Watts linkage is up the right way round. I could fiddle around a bit more, but I've actually got to go down the shops now, so I'll stop the video there. But basically the guts of it are in there and hanging there. I need to sort out the correct arrangement of washers and nuts and bolts for my dampers, and rig up the Schroeder valve so I can put a bit of air in it. That incidentally should be on one of the dampers. Where's that come from? Not that one, hopefully it's this one. Anyway, it's probably at the bottom of that one. Yeah, so yeah, stuff still to do, and I'm gonna leave it there. Nothing's done up, all just loose, because there's no point doing it up. It wants to settle and jiggle, and then it will be nipped up later on. Right. Well, I was going to go down the shops, and then I got a cool thing, not needed, so I did fiddle around. I got one side in. This has involved going through multiple boxes of washers is illustrated by that there pile, and basically these are original, these ones and black ones that are in the car are original inside, oh no, just original washers from an SD1 outboard side. And then these are the thinner ones that come with the kit. These aren't big enough to go over the original bushes, so they're hence using those, but the outboard end is small and these are thin and they will work perfect. So that's what I'm doing. And tomorrow I will work out how I'm going to run the airlines. I didn't really want to drill any more holes in the car, nor do I want to attach airlines somewhere conspicuous or somewhere where it could get caught in the suspension, but I'll have a think. Basically, you need to run an airline from this to the other one and then T between the two to somewhere sensible, so I can pump an electric tyre pump and make the back of the car go up and down. So we can play with that tomorrow. That's another one. Again, it's a Spitfire, but that one's got the black and white stripes on the underside of the wings, whereas the one that went over earlier just had the roundel. So something funny must be going on. Anyway, done a tiny bit more tidying. Blah blah blah. Interesting content. Yeah. Oh, I know what I can show you. These I've given another coat of black. That's the handbrake compensator lever thing. Then over here we have resplendent in alloy wheel silver. We have the fuel lines, so they can go on tomorrow, which will be good. Handbrake cables down there, that can go on tomorrow as well. And then what else did I paint? Oh no, I'd never painted it, did I? I had that brake cable. That will need doing at some point. Right, I really am going to stop chuntering away now. Bye. Once again, I got bored, so I came back down the garage and fiddled with the air suspension. I have now installed the line, so I've just got one line out of one cylinder across to this side into the T-piece, up to that cylinder, the Schroeder valve, my electric tyre pump. This is all temporary because ultimately I'll mount the Schroeder valve either under the rear bumper or in the boot somewhere easy to get to. But I just wanted to put some air pressure in these because the car is no longer on its axle stands on the sills. It's on the axle stands on the axles. So I want air in these because they are technically loaded. So I have my electric tyre pump. I've set it to 30 psi. I couldn't find a tape measure, so we'll just have to eyeball it, but I'll switch that on and we shall both together see what happens. Jesus Christ, it's going up already. Wow, that's effective. I was probably moving the camera so you wouldn't have been able to see that, but let's go up to 40 psi and I'll try and mount the camera somewhere sensible. Right, so what can I use? Jack handle against back of car. Ugh. Well, it did go up again, but a tiny bit. That's cool. I like it. Right, let's go even higher. That's definitely going up. I can see it. Hopefully you can too. That's cool. Interesting to see what it will ride like, but that's made me very happy because I have air in them. I should be able to disconnect that valve and it shouldn't just leak out if I've done it up properly. In fact, oh, look at that! That's cool. Oh, excuse me, but no, that is really cool. I'm pleased with that. set it back to, well, 50, shall we go? Who knows? Loving it. Apart from the fact it looks like a donkey's foreskin, the system appears to work brilliantly. Happy days. Next morning, it's another lovely sunny day, and the air suspension hasn't gone down, so that's a start. I am going to work my way through all the other bits and pieces that kind of need to go on the back of the car, starting with the clamps that hold the rear springs in. I painted them up yesterday, so they are now done, and they just bolt between the spring platforms and sit over the top of the springs, holding them to the rear axle. So if you go airborne, the springs don't detach from the back of the car, which is extremely unlikely. So they just bolt on over there, like so. Spring retainers are in, little clamps up there and up there. That's done. While I was under here, I did start doing up some of the suspension because it's now supported on the axle, so the weight of the car is acting through the rear suspension, and I've adjusted it so that these bars are pretty much parallel, so that's standard ride height, and that means I can do up the things like these bushes here and the forks and everything. These ones, all the others I've just done by feel, but these training arms I'm actually using the factory torque wrench setting, so although they're pulley bushes in there, they're meant to be 54 Newton meters, so that's what I'm going to do. Obviously the more you compress this, the more you're pulling the axle forward on that side, so you want them even, and then any adjustment for tracking, get the rear axle straight, will be done by moving the forks forwards and backwards on the inner sill. So at least if I get these both at 54 Newton meters, that's a start of being straight, hopefully. Fuel pipe time. I've just peeled the masking tape off, given them a final clean up with some thinners on the bits of black pipe and yellow pipe, so that the overspray is gone. I found my bits of hardware from under the car, so now I can refit them. Fuel pipes are in over there, running up to where they need to go. I've terminated the rear end, one above the tank from the outlet and the other the return, and now I'm playing with handbrake cables, so I've laid it out where it needs to go. This section goes up and over that bracket on the rear of the axle to this side. This bit, it gets a bit more complicated, so you have the compensator, which is this bit, which hangs off the axle. That bolts together the two halves with a nut and bolt, like so, and clamps around that drum bit, like that. And then up here are these special top hat bushes. These ones are brand new because the old ones were, what have I done with it? Oh, I did have it here to show you. Oh, there it is. Decidedly second hand. The rubber had actually aged quite well. I think it got a bit hot and turned crumbly, but I'll keep it as a spare because very often these have completely digested and disappeared. It has a special bolt with a much bigger shank section in diameter than the threaded section. That goes up through that hole there and sort of supports the whole assembly. Then it has almost like an aero lock nut, so not a nylock, but one that's done by actually splitting the nut itself. So we've got to assemble all of that, and then there's a couple of new clevis pins to go on the outboard ends where there's a R clip and a washer, so I have to get some new R clips and washers as well. But I don't know what you're meant to lubricate it with. I'm going to use copper grease, but it's probably meant to be silicone or something like that, so that it doesn't digest the rubber. But in fact, yeah, I might use that instead. This is the old silicone grease that came with the poly bushes or Super Pro Superflex bushes, so I'll use that instead. That's all in and dandy. Went to fit my new clevises. Bought new from Rimmer Brothers, and guess what? Of course they don't fit. So that's an original, and that's the Rimmer Brothers one. Basically, you could probably just about get a split pin through there, but you're not going to get the washer and an original R clip. So that one I'll reuse, and I'll go through my box of bits and see if I've got another. But why do Rimmer Brothers sell this shit? The route around my Rover boxes has turned up some gold. Look at those kiddies, eh? Two really nice ones. One R clip. Got loads of other split pins. I might just use a split pin, but that's ideal. Handbrake cables all in and attached and lubricated. It's attached at the front as well. That was another clevis pin. Long term, this bracket thing, it's just a piece of bent wire. They act as like little saddles just to hold the cable. There's one here and then there's one up there as well. I won't bother doing that yet. I'll have the prop to go in, the exhaust, and make sure it's all out of the way before I clip that in the right place. But that is where I'll leave today's video. Yeah, rear end all in, all done up. I torqued up the dampers as well. And really, the wheels could go on the back and it could be dumped on the ground. Not a lot else under the back to do. I'll leave it in the air because might as well. Although I could do with one of these axle stands back, because I need to now go and change the gearbox oil on my daily driver. Another fun job for the weekend. Anyway, toodle pip, until next time, bye.